Hi everyone, my name is Jay, and today we're going to be going over variables. So what is a variable anyways? A variable is just a fancy way of saying that we have an unknown. It's an unknown quantity of something and we're not really sure what. So the way that we use these in math is by giving them a letter. For example, we can say that the letter could be X, Y, or Z, which are the most common ones that you're going to be coming across. But it can be any letter, such as A, B, F, or W. Pretty much if it's a letter, it can be used as a variable. But these are the ones that you're going to run into the most. So we're used to seeing equations such as 5 plus 3 equals 8. But the way that we use variables is by plugging them into an equation for an unknown. For example, 5 plus x equals 8. Now, we don't know what x is. All we know is that if we add 5 to x, we're going to get 8. So what we need to do is we need to isolate x. We need to get it over here by itself so that we have something that looks like x equals the unknown number, which would be, again, x equals x. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this 5 to be over here with this 8. The way that we do that is by balancing the equation, which means that anything I do to this side of the equation, I need to do to this side. So because this is a positive 5, we need to subtract 5, which is going to give us 0. And then go ahead and bring that x down. So you have 0 plus x equals 8 minus 5. 0 plus x is just going to give us x, and 8 minus 5 is going to give us 3. X equals 3. And the way that we make sure that's true is we plug 3 back in for x. Adding 3 back in for x will prove that x really is 3. 5 plus 3 is 8, which we know to be true. So the reason it's important to be able to solve for variables is because not all of the equations that you run into are going to be as nice as this one. Some of them are going to have larger numbers or even fractions later on. So let's go ahead and try to solve one that's a bit harder than this. Let's do 27 plus x equals 60. So we know that we need to isolate x. And again, just like we did before, we'll move 27 from this side over to this side. And we need to balance the equation, so anything I do to this side, I need to do to this side as well. So that's going to give us x on this side. And then we'll do 60 minus 27. So 0 minus 7, we need to pull from the 6. 10 minus 7 is 3. And 5 minus 2 is also 3. X equals 33. Let's go ahead and plug that 33 back in for x to make sure that that's correct. We've got 33 plus 27. 7 plus 3 is 10, so carry of 1. 3, 4, 5, 6. 60. So this is true. I'm going to go ahead and give you one to try on your own. You can pause the video or you can watch it through if you feel like you need to watch another one. Alright, so again, we need to isolate x, get it by itself. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to pull 40 from this side and this side in order to keep the equation balanced. That's going to give us x on this side, and then 7 minus 0 is still 7, 6 minus 4 is 2. That's going to give us x equals 27. And again, plug 27 back into your equation to make sure that you got it correct. 40 plus 27, 7 plus 0 is 7, 4 plus 2 is 6, 67. So x does equal 27. Now we can do this with subtraction as well. Let's try it with a really easy one first. 8 minus x equals 3. We need to do the opposite of whatever this sign is. So the opposite of subtracting is adding. Now, if you'll notice, we can't really isolate x because that would make x have a negative in front of it. So what we need to do is we have to move x around some. Not all equations that you run into are going to be like this, but it does happen. And when you have to move x, don't be afraid to move it. Sometimes you have to in order to make the equation work. So what we're going to do is we're going to add x to both sides. Because whatever this number is, if we add the exact same number, just like we did before with the numbers that we knew the value of, it's just going to give us 0. So now we've just got 8 plus 0 on this side equals 3 plus x, which is 8 equals 3 plus x. And now we can move the 3 because we know that this is positive. So let's go ahead and move that 3. Subtract 3 from both sides, and it's going to give us 5 equals x. Now usually the x is on the other side of the equation, like written like this. But it's okay if in order to solve the equation you have to write it like this, but most of the times your answer format will have to be x equals something, not something equals x. Alright, let's try another one. X minus 33 equals 2. So what we're going to do is the opposite of this sign. And notice that x doesn't have the sign on it anymore. So x is good to stay over here. We don't need to move x now. We're just going to move the 33, and we're going to do that by adding. So let's add 33 to both sides. It's going to give us x equals 3 plus 2 is 5, so 35. And again, plug 35 back in to check. 35 minus 33, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So x does equal 35. So I'm going to give you one to practice with. If you can't do it by yourself yet, that's fine. You can continue to watch me do it. But if you think you're ready for a challenge, go ahead and pause the video as soon as I'm done writing the equation down. Alright, go ahead and give it a go. Alright, so we need to get x by itself. And x doesn't have the negative sign on it, so x is good to stay over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 27 to both sides to make sure that x is by itself. 38 plus 27. 8 plus 7 is 15. 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6, which is 65. So let's go ahead and plug 65 back in for x. Alright, so we're going to have to move, 5 minus 7, we're going to have to pull from this 6. So go ahead and pull from the 6 and make that into a 5, and make this into 15. 15 minus 7 is 8, and then 5 minus 2 is 3, which is 38. X does equal 65, so if you got 65, good job. Let's go ahead and try some multiplication now. It's a little bit more complicated, but so long as you know how to do basic multiplication, you're going to be fine, I promise. So let's go ahead and try to do 2 times x equals 4. Now, if you'll notice, our multiplication sign looks a whole lot like our variable. So in order to make that not happen, you'll start to see multiplication signs written as a dot instead, because this dot doesn't look like any of our variables. So it's easy to distinguish that we're multiplying, and it's easy to distinguish the multiplication symbol from the variable. So we need to do the opposite of whatever we did. So we're multiplying. So this time we're going to need to divide. Now, like addition, it doesn't matter what order you do things in when you're multiplying. It only matters what order you're doing things in when you're subtracting or dividing. So let's go ahead and divide by 2. Because 2 over 2 is going to give us 1. And 1 times anything is itself. So it's okay if this becomes a 1, because 1 times x is still going to give us the value of x. And go ahead and divide by 2 on this side, because we need to make sure that our equations are balanced. That's going to give us x equals 2. Plug 2 back in for x, and we're going to get 2 times 2 equals 4, which is true. X does equal 2. So let's go ahead and try a harder one. 4 times x is 16. So again, we're going to have to do the opposite of this sign. So we're going to need to divide. So 4 divided by 4 to make that into a 1. 16 divided by 4. That's going to give us x equals 4. And then go ahead and plug 4 back into the equation. 4 times 4 is 16. So this is correct. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and give you one to try on your own. Alright. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we can solve this one. We're going to need to divide by 6 now. So let's go ahead and do that. Make that into a 1 and divide by 6 here. 30 divided by 6 is 5. So that's going to give us x equals 5, which we know to be true. So if you got x equals 5, great work. You're doing amazing. All right. And lastly, we're going to look at some division. So let's try x divided by 3 equals 15. So the way that we're going to have to do this one is, again, we need to isolate x while also making sure that we're doing the opposite sign of this. So in order to do that, we're going to multiply by 3 on both sides. So we're going to get x equals 15 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry that 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Plus 1 is 4. We got x equals 45. So let's go ahead and plug 45 back in for x. 45 divided by 3. So that's going to give us a 1 minus 3. Bring down that 5. And then that's going to give us 5. Because 3 times 5 is 15. So we know that this is correct. Alright. Let's try another one. X divided by 9 equals 27. Again, we need to do the opposite of what this is while isolating x. So let's go ahead and multiply by 9 on both sides. X equals 27 times 9. That's going to give us 63. And 9 times 2 is 18. Which is going to give us 24 right there. So that's going to give us a really big number of 243. So let's try and do 243 divided by 9, because we need to plug this back in to make sure that that's correct. So you can't put 9 into 2, so that's not going to work. But you can't put 9 into 24, because 9 times 2 is 18. So let's go ahead and solve for this. We need to pull 1 from over here, so we need to do 14 minus 8. Which is going to be 6. Then we can pull down that 3. And we know that 9 times 7 is 63, which is going to give us 27, which is the same answer as here. So x really does equal 243. Are you starting to see why variables are so important? Because that's a really big number, and that would be really hard to do if we didn't know how to solve for that variable. We would be here for hours trying to figure out what x was if we didn't know how to solve for it. So let's go ahead and try another one. I'm going to not make it as hard as that last one though. And you can try this one on your own and see how you're doing. Let's do x divided by 2 equals 16. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this one. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 2 on both sides. Again, equation balancing and making sure you're doing the opposite sign. That's going to give us x equals 16 times 2. 6 times 2 is 12, so carry your 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, and that's going to give us 32. So now let's plug 32 back in up here. So we're going to do 32 divided by 2. That's going to give us 1. And then 2 times 6 is 12, so that's going to give us 16, which is correct. So if you got x equals 32, great job. And that's going to be the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to an educator. All right, have a good one.